A girl, and after a sometimes lonely path to the pinnacle of U.S. politics, a boy born just after the 1960 election. Millions of people waited with her for the birth of a third child and mourned when the boy died just after birth. Millions more saw rifle bullets cut down her husband in Dallas 3 months later and mourned with her again. John Kennedy's funeral provided some of the most poignant images of the 1960s. Jackie retreated from public life to raise her children, and then 4 months after Bobby Kennedy was killed in California while making his bid for the presidency, she returned to the spotlight with marriage to a much older man, billionaire Greek shipowner Aristotle Onassis, who died 7 years later. Jackie Onassis had a lifelong love of horses and letters. Eventually, she went to work as a book editor, helping sign reclusive Michael Jackson to an autobiography contract, while trying to guard her own privacy as well. Her public statements were few and non-political.
I believe it's time to stop the overbuilding in New York City by drawing the line at Columbus Circle.
Norman Rockwell painted her portrait, with permission. Less famous photographers clamored to record her every public move. She got a court to order one especially persistent freelancer to keep at least 100 feet away. Got another to tell a clothing company to keep a look-alike out of its advertising, and refused a biographer's request for help in chronicling her life. A few years before her death, an acquaintance asked Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis about her life. Her only response, "It's been interesting."
Funeral arrangements are not yet complete, but the White House is expected to provide an honor guard and a military plane. Last night, President Clinton issued a statement that reads in part, "Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis was a model of courage and dignity for all Americans and all the world. More than any other woman of her time, she captivated our nation and the world with her intelligence, elegance, and grace." The press secretary to another First Lady remembers Onassis this way.
The day after the funeral, and she wrote in her own handwriting a letter to Vice President Johnson, "Dear Mr. President," and it was a thank you for walking yesterday behind Jack. Would you like me to read the letter?
Sure, if you have it handy.
You did not have to do that. I'm sure many people forbid you to take such a risk, but you did it anyway. Thank you for your letters to my children. What those letters will mean to them later, you can imagine. The touching thing is they've always loved you so much. They were most moved to have a letter from you now. And most of all, Mr. President, thank you for the way you've always treated me, the way you and Lady Bird have always been to us, before when Jack was alive and now as president.
Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy Onassis was 64 years old. A spokeswoman for the family of Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis says the former First Lady died much the way she had lived, quietly, with dignity, surrounded by those she loved. Relatives and friends had filed in and out of Onassis' New York apartment since Wednesday, when she checked out of a hospital after learning her lymph cancer had become untreatable. It was a characteristic decision of a woman who never sought the spotlight, yet personified style and charisma and grace under pressure. Lynn Russell looks back.
Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy Onassis. Each name represents a chapter in the remarkable life of the woman best known simply as Jackie. There was the storybook beginning for 24-year-old Jacqueline Bouvier. When the former debutante and budding photojournalist married the dashing war hero senator from Massachusetts, the world already was watching. And when John F. Kennedy was elected President of the United States 7 years later, Camelot came to the White House.
2 years ago, I said that, introduced myself in Paris by saying that I was the man who had accompanied Mrs. Kennedy to Paris. I'm getting that same sensation as I travel around Texas.
At the center of it all, the always glamorous 31-year-old First Lady who combined poise, intelligence, and sophistication to become the closest thing to royalty America had ever had.
That's an unconfirmed report that the president was hit in the head. The President's wife, Jackie Kennedy, was not hurt. She walked into the hospital at her husband's stretcher side.
Her greatest ordeal coincided with one of the nation's own deepest wounds. After the funeral, she issued a farewell speech of sorts, expressing her gratitude to the American people.
I want to take this opportunity to express my appreciation for the hundreds of thousands of messages, nearly 800,000 in all, which my children and I have received over the past few weeks. The knowledge of the affection in which my husband was held by all of you has sustained me.
By almost all accounts, it was the children who sustained Jacqueline Kennedy through those trying times and beyond. A longtime friend says Caroline and John were the center of her world throughout her adult life.